Good morning, my creative friends. Dr. Minette Riordan here. This is Painting in Your PJs live with Minette, where we gather to connect, to create, to play on the page, but also to see how working with art can be a process of really deepening our own connection to self, our own understanding of self. And To me, it's one of the most important things that I do as part of my own radical self care. And as we're on the cusp here of transitioning from January into February already, holy wow, can't believe that January has gone by quite so quickly. It's been a full and fun month. I want to spend the month of February talking about self love and radical self acceptance and how creativity can play a part in getting to know ourselves. And I'll share more about that tomorrow. But I thought I'd finish out the month with one of my favorite ways to just get my creativity flowing, to get over that blank page, to just get the energy moving and have some fun on the page. So, welcome again. I'm Dr. Minette Riordan. This is Painting in Your PJs live with Minette. I'm here most Monday to Thursday mornings from 7 to about 8 a.m. Mountain Time. And so today we're going to start. Good morning, Judy. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for letting me know that you're here. It means the world to know that people are watching live or watching the replay. So thanks for being here. And I learned this process originally from Whitney Freya and her Creatively Fit coaching. And it's called Soul Scribbles, and it's just a great way to get some marks down on the page. If you've been watching some of my videos, you know I love working with these big, fat chisel tip Sharpies because they're imperfect by nature and they make big, bold lines as well. And so basic, and I'm also going to work with a complementary color palette today, a purple and yellow. We'll see what happens. We'll see if I can stick to that. So I'm working in my handmade journal that I've been working in all month. I love working, even better, Judy. Thank you so much for being here. So I've been working in this book. It's made out of recycled manila file folders, and it can take a lot of abuse, which I really love. I've got some extra sheets of paper down here just to protect the painting of the peacock that I did yesterday and the pages underneath so I don't get pages all stuck together. And so I can really focus on this page. And the concept of a soul scribble is literally to grab a piece of paper. You could do this with crayons, with markers, with pencils, with any black permanent pen, and just to close your eyes and just in sort of 3 seconds or less, just kind of make some marks on the page. And then to kind of look at that and begin to see, what can I see here? Is there something perhaps for today that I want to know or see? And this is a great practice in learning to look at your art differently and start to just turn your page around. I'm kind of feeling maybe like there's a bird shape happening here, right? Sort of this swooping bird. There's kind of a funny face happening, a little hair. I could add a little ear. This could become a nose. And so learning to just play with the marks on the page. When I look at it this way, it's almost like some kind of character here with a hand raised, maybe sort of dancing across the page. But what I'm seeing is there's a lot of movement on the page. There's a lot of windy paths. There's a lot of energy moving, a lot going on. Sometimes I see characters really quickly, and sometimes I don't. So it feels kind of fun looking at it this way. And I'm going to just continue maybe to add a few marks. So this kind of feels like maybe it's an eye here. So what happens if I just add an eye? Oh, then all of a sudden I see a bird, and here is that bird's beak here. And this then becomes a beautiful wing of the bird. And this bird looks pretty peaceful and restful. I have a busy, busy week this week in my business, and so maybe this restfulness is really good. So this kind of feels like maybe there's some more feathers hanging out of this bird. It must be a birdie kind of week. Yesterday I painted a peacock. Today I've got this funny little bird. And then this feels like it's probably the branch of a tree. And this bird is sitting on a nest. And when my weeks are busy, I long for even more time for nesting, even more time for nesting and for rest. I was awake way too early this morning. And so there's that part of me that definitely feels like I could have used a little more sleep and rest. But just from that little 3-second squiggle, I have this kind of playful, silly bird perched on the page. I'm kind of liking it going this way. So again, I'm just going to cover that page up there so I don't get paint all over it. And I love this kind of silly, quirky animal showing up on the page. So I encourage you to try this out multiple times in your journal. If I were to turn to another page and do this again, I would get something completely different on the page. And they're fun to simply do in black and white this way. You can also add color to them. I could leave this right here where it is and think more about needing more time in my nest. And for those of you that do watch regularly, you know I love adding writing to my pages or scribbles and marks to my pages and then painting over them. So needing more time in my nest for rest. And deep rest is one of my 6 pillars of a radiant life that I teach. Good morning, Blanca. Great to see you here, my friend. And so I can tell when I'm not making time for deep rest, when maybe I'm drinking too much caffeine. And I'm just adding some other shapes and marks to the page. Again, it's so fun to just draw these soul scribbles and have them be abstract and playful and show me a little bit about what I need. So there's a clear message here about what I need more of. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start adding some paint, and I'm going to work with the complementary palette, complementary meaning colors that are opposite each other on the color wheel. So I'm going to work with purple and yellow and probably a little maybe some Payne's gray or black and white. So, and see where we get to. So I'm sort of challenging myself over the last couple of days to kind of narrow my focus and get to know how these complementary colors are going to play together. And it was fun to start with a soul scribble. So if you're just joining me this morning and you missed the first part, I literally closed my eyes and drew some scribbles on the page, then turned my journal around a few times to see what I could see, and what appeared was this wonky little bird sitting on its sweet little nest on a branch on a tree. Again, one of the things about getting over that blank page is just putting those, good morning, is just putting those marks down. That's a great way to get over that blank page. Another way to get over the blank page is adding words. Another one is simply just adding any kind of random marks, taking a pen or a pencil and just putting lines on the page. So sometimes the places that we get stuck are just starting. So remember, when you're starting with any kind of visual journaling or art journaling, it's all about building up the layers. And so when you're building up those layers, remember that whatever you start with isn't going to show at the end unless you want it to. It's not going to show at the end unless you want it to. Okay, I have no plan in mind here, but I'm feeling like I'm just going to start coming in with a couple of different shades of yellow. Then I'll come back with some purple. I'm going to mix my purple and yellow together and see if I can get a nice brown over here for my stem. My clouds might have some yellow, like light is shining on them. We also need a color for our nest here. I don't care if I'm covering up the marks underneath or if those marks continue to show. I'm working with a dry brush. I don't need the page to get super wet. I like how the colors dry and layer when I am working in a dry brush this way. So this is a funny yellow. It's called gold yellow, but it's almost a little bit orange. I'm probably going to fill this entire page with color and with marks, and I'm just starting with some of my yellows. And we'll see where we get to. And good morning, Kay. Great to see you. Marion, good morning. So we started with a simple soul scribble this morning, which is a fun process that many people have taught over the years, but I first learned it from an artist, Whitney Freya, who really gave me the inspiration and just really courage to start my painting journey over a decade ago. I became a creatively fit coach through her program a number of years ago as well. But she really inspired so much of my painting. All right, so I'm going to get a couple of different purples going on my palette here. And right now I'm just getting color on my page and just having fun making a mess. I think I want to come back and make all these leaves yellow. I still have yellow on my brush, so you can see how instantly that purple and yellow are combining to be a little bit more brown, which is perfect for where I'm going. And again, I'm just having fun, right? This is meant to be playful, simple, to get that creative juice flowing. I often do this in my journal before I start writing as a way to just warm up. Sometimes if I want to do some journal writing and the words aren't there, if I let myself just do one of these soul scribbles, ask a question, draw a scribble, it can be a great way into the creative process. And having sort of a bit of a toolbox, if you will, of ways to start your pages is really valuable for those days when you want to have some time to create and play, but you don't know where to start. And you watch the limited time you have for creative play sort of slipping by as you sit there, not even looking at the page because you're afraid to even maybe open the journal or look at that canvas. And so again, putting your own marks, adding stencils or stamps are some of the ways that you can get a page started. I even do this on canvases, even if I know where I'm going. So I'm adding a little bit of Payne's gray to that to just darken that up a little bit, get a little darker shade of purple. So Payne's gray is a very blue gray. So it's not quite in my complementary color palette, but I just want some variety here on the page, some difference in my shades and my tones. Let me get some shadows going on these clouds. So I'm just sort of sitting here pondering, where do I want to go next? Purples and yellows are, not necessarily my go-to colors. Working with only two colors is a challenge and a stretch for me. So you're going to watch me sort of muddle my way through this page this morning and see where I can get to. And when I'm working with acrylics, I mentioned this, I think, yesterday as well, that I like to work with a dry brush, but two, I like to change my brush up to make sure I'm getting different marks. And if I want to get, go back to my yellow, a pure yellow, and I don't want that, I'm looking for where I put this other tube of yellow. It probably got buried under here. If I don't want my purple to mix with my yellow, it's a lot easier to start with a clean brush than to try to get that yellow out of the brush. Apparently that one had a little bit of blue left in there from something else. So this is a much lighter yellow. This is a Hamsa yellow light. And we talked yesterday about when you're sort of working with color and color mixing, to kind of pay attention to the various shades to discover what it is that you like. Okay, I want to just maybe get some movement and light in the background, and I'm wondering if it's possible to only do this page in purple and yellow. So at the moment it's feeling quite limiting and challenging, and we've hit the messy middle, right? We've hit the messy middle here. And I think I want some darker purple. This one is so hard to get open. So this is the Permanent Violet Dark by Golden, and this is a heavy body acrylic. I like using a combination of the heavy body and the more fluid acrylics. Create more texture. They work great on this surface, but these are probably my favorite consistency of paint that I use the most often, and this would be sort of a medium body paint. It's not heavy body, they're not professional paints, but they're a great option. The Liquitex and the Amsterdam acrylics are both a great option. Okay, so I'm going to get some of that darker. I'm going to start to use my brush to kind of make some marks to get some variety. I've got just a little bit of color flowing on the page here. I'm going to come in and just put some color down on the background. Just letting it go right over the top of that yellow. Colors dry very fast where I live here in Colorado. So I'm feeling like I want this to be just a lot of just sort of daubs of paint, a lot of movement, a lot of color. And so I'm definitely going to need a variety of shades of the different purples happening here. And so we're just going to start layering in this color in the background, starting to fill up all of that space. Again, letting the brush do a lot of the texture work for me. I'm using sort of short strokes. We talked yesterday about playing with your brushes to see what your brushes will do, and this is one of the ways that you can do that, is just by switching up brushes when you're working on your backgrounds to see what it is, what kind of marks and shapes. I can have my paint also going different directions on the page, so some of those marks are vertical, some are horizontal. So we're getting a nice dark purple background happening here. And when you're working with acrylics, it's often best to work dark to light, opposite of watercolor. And wow, is that a messy page, right? So it's a happy, joyful, messy page of complementary colors. I'm noticing that even this small brush is big to get around some of these edges here. So I'm going to come in just maybe a little more carefully and learning to use all the different sides of your brush, right? What does the tip do? And because I'm hard on my brushes, my tips get frayed because I do like to make a lot of marks and whoosh that paint around on canvas, and it can really fray the edges of my paint brushes. But use the sides, use the whole brush, really play with what are all the things that brush can do. And I can always come back and add more of those black lines later. I don't normally paint my Soul Scribbles. I tend to use markers or colored pencils, even pastels. Do them quickly, so this is kind of a fun challenge to do this with some paint. See where we're going to get to. So from those of you that are watching, I'd love to hear what part of the process feels challenging for you. Is it the getting started? Is it the blank page? Is it the fear that you can't create on the page what it is that you're seeing in your head? Is it having an idea for what to create at all? Part of what I love about visual journaling practices, like I teach and work with, is it's an intuitive inner process. And it doesn't matter what that end is going to look like. And it helps us just have a better knowing and place and where to start. So now I'm coming in with some white, create some more contrast, brighten up that sky. And of course, I want my little kooky bird here to pop out from the purple background. And right now, all my marks are kind of going one way, almost as if they're following the flow of the clouds. We'll see if that ends up being true or not. I also want this branch over here to stick out. So what stops you from getting started? Oftentimes we tell ourselves time stops us from getting started. And I will separate out the time spent sort of planning or cleaning my studio or getting set up to paint from actual painting time. Because if I tell myself I have to clean up before I can go create, I won't get started. I try to leave my space neat and ready for the next session. And I'm very fortunate to have lots and lots of beautiful studio space. It's not beautiful, but it's very usable studio space in our basement to work and create in. And it can get pretty darn messy. And I find that when it's too messy, it definitely inhibits and doesn't support my creativity. And so leaving my space ready so the next morning when I get up, which is my favorite time to create, which is why we're here for painting in your PJs, so that the next time that I get up, I'm ready to just sit down and create. I'd love to hear from others. What stops you from getting started? What stops you from getting started? Finding time. Yep, that's a big one, Judy. Thank you for sharing. Finding time to create. And what I can tell you about that is it's one of those things that we have to prioritize like any other act of self care. It makes us feel better, it's fulfilling, it's meaningful, and it can be done in 15-minute increments. So it's lovely when we have an hour or a day to create, but it doesn't happen very often, at least not for me. So I just made it my work. So me being here with you guys is one of the ways that I get more creative time in every day. I also love creating in front of the television at night or while listening to an audiobook. And I look at all the different ways I get to be creative, making a beautiful salad. I made this really yummy. Now I've got everything feels very monochromatic again, right? So I've probably come in with too much of the white over the top of the purple. So I'm going to come back and build some of those purples up again, but also wanting to build up my yellows and whites or yellows. So I'm thinking more white on top of my yellow to add some texture and some tooth. Ah, Kay, thank you. That is huge. Thank you for being really willing to say that. I love that. Thinking you should do something great. Sometimes the blank page, said Blanca. Yep. Sometimes the blank page. Magazine images are, as I showed yesterday in the peacock painting, just an image from a magazine can provide a spark of inspiration, a color palette, an image, or a shape. So sometimes just flipping through images in a magazine or online can help that fear of the blank page as well as marks and journaling. So let's talk about this idea of I think I should do something great. So, such a big one. As adults, we tend to think that we should get everything fast, right out of the gate. And we tend to think that we should be Picasso with our first drawing. Ah, Marion, I love that. What a great way to start, just adding gesso to the page so that you have a prepared page. That's a great way to do it. So I can't remember if I shared on here or not. And I love actually gessoing pages, right? It's fun to just be in that. I mean, it can become a very mindful activity of its own to prepare pages. So I think about Picasso. We recently saw a little really amazing exhibit of his printmaking. I didn't even know that he had done so much printmaking. He was very experimental and loved collaborating with other artists. And one of the bio pieces said that he'd made over 50,000 works of art in his lifetime, and I think it averaged out to more than one a day. But he had incredible ability to sketch and play on paper anytime, wherever he was, right? And so, great artists will tell you it's kind of like the old cliche the only way to get to Carnegie Hall is practice, practice, practice. And yet, as adults, we tend to think that, I think that's going to become purple. I'm not digging that. Um, that we should be masters right out the gate. But think back to when you were a kid. Think back to early days of career and school and learning something new. And practice time in the studio is invaluable time, right? I was flipping through some old journals, just looking at some of the drawing practice I've done over the last couple of years. So learning to have a sketchbook practice or a soul scribble practice, like how can you get back to the playfulness of creativity instead of the rigor of I have to create something great, or I have to, create something useful or valuable, and get back to really almost like being a kindergartner when making art was fun, right? When making art was fun. So it's crazy just watching my own process, noticing where the page is going. And this is definitely about creative process and play, about needing time in my nest to rest. There was nothing here. Marion, something you don't hate. I have to tell you that when I create something that I don't like, I don't know if I would use hate anymore, but I tend to throw things away, start over. Most of my canvases have multiple paintings on them where I have painted something that I didn't love and then just paint over it. Gesso is your friend when you're working with acrylic paints. But even Kay in my Zentangle practice, not every tile or Zendala I create is pleasing to my eye, right? Pleasing to my eye. In fact, I had a big botanical Zendala that I was working on this week, and I didn't finish it because I wasn't loving where it was going. And my creative time is precious, right? So if I don't like it, I move on, don't linger. And you can almost always find something you like, right? Like one little piece. Use your phone and look around at the edges of it and kind of try to find what's to love about this. Is there a line, a mark? Did you like the color combinations? Also, being willing to throw away the things you don't like, don't let them stack up, or repurpose them, cut them up, and use them in collage. Again, paint over them. So it's funny kind of painting this little guy on a bit of an angle here, but that's how he showed up on the page. When we moved last year, yep, cut them up for collage. Good morning, Barbara. Great to see you here, my friend. Repurpose, reuse, recycle, right? I mean, how often has that been really sort of hammered into all of us over the last few decades? Well, it's true in our art as well. True in our art as well. All right, so I want this little guy to get dry, and then I'm going to come back with the yellows again. So I'm going to set him aside here for just a second. And what did I do with that other book? And I'm going to show the Soul Scribble process again. And actually, I will, while that one dries for just a second, make some room on my table. I'll do a flip through of, this is another handmade journal. These were all started with that same Soul Scribble process. I went through a phase, so this says December of 2021, where I was doing Soul Scribbles, adding marks and Zentangles to them. Some got finished, some didn't. Practicing perspective. I love, love, love this little elephant character that appeared on the page. Again, drawing practice, and then this puppy dog. So it's so fun. Here's a horse and a sort of maybe a Pegasus and a raven. And it's amazing where this process can take you and help you to see your own art a little bit better. Quirky birds and kitty cats and dragons. This was somebody's like playing with India ink from somebody's class, right? You can see where I've started so many of these and not all of them got finished or completed, but having some kind of simple process that you do. This is inexpensive mixed media paper. So this is a playful way to just get marks on the page, get comfortable with your tools. I loved this one. So this one I used, I think, water soluble crayons. I love elephants and birds. You can see how often they just appear over and over again. So just finding ways to play in your journal. And what I love about handmade journals, this was a drawing from my mom's on an old piece of sketchbook paper that got stuck in this journal, which I love. I have some of her in here. But learning to play in your journal is really powerful to get over the fear of the blank page, to loosen up, to stretch outside your comfort zone. And you can use any tool to do this. Sharpie goes through this paper because it's not great paper, but it's really simple. And close your eyes and count to 3 or 5 and see what happens, right? See what happens. So maybe I've got a big bug or grasshopper showing up in here. It also teaches you to look and to see the shapes of things so that when you are learning to draw, trying to improve your drawing skills. Drawing has everything to do with seeing the edges of things, and this teaches you to see the edges of things in new ways. So it's really important to turn the page and see what you see. So as soon as I turn the page, there's a mountain landscape here. The sun is rising over this mountain landscape. Sometimes you go, I don't see anything. Well, I'm seeing this crazy face here. So these could be big, sort of Picasso like eyes. And all of a sudden, we have a face with something growing out of its head. So the more you turn your pages around, the different things that you can see on the page. And it's such a great sketchbook practice to just kind of get you flowing freely. So, Soul Scribbles, and you can use this as an intuitive process. So, you might even just ask yourself, what is it that I need more of in my day today? Close your eyes and then just see what it is that I need. Oh, look at that. There's a nice big heart. So definitely feeling like I need a little rest and self-care in this busy, busy week. So there's a heart in there. There's also a lot of movement, and it's going to be cold but sunny today. It's like -8 degrees here right now, but if it gets up over 20, I will be outside getting some fresh air and sunshine. So again, this looks like maybe a stick figure on the run here. So learning to see what's going on in your art is just a fun, playful way to approach a blank page. So those are our soul scribbles. All right, so we've got our funky little birdie drying up over here. And he definitely needs some of those darker colors. So I've got the branch nice and dark. I'm going to darken him up a little bit. I want to make sure those purples stand out from the background. And if you're playing with Soul Scribbles this morning, I love seeing what you're creating. So you can share it on my Instagram at Dr. Minette Riordan and tag me so I can see what it is that you're creating. This is this funny little very stiff brush that's made for acrylics, but it makes some cool texture and marks. All right, so I'm going to put away these purples for a minute and have some fun with my yellows. I might come back in with my black marker, or I'm thinking it would be really fun to come back in with a white Posca to add some marks over the top. But I can also come back in, and if I just want my nest to stand out, chisel tip Sharpies are the bomb. I love them. And I want to just kind of give that simple illusion of my birdies sitting on a nest. I've always really loved old-fashioned folk art. And one of the things I loved was the bright, bold colors, the simple shapes, and the black background or black outlines that made things leap off the page. So I look for creative inspiration too and think about, what are the different art styles that I want to explore? What are the different art styles that I want to explore? And it can be fun to practice, like what would it look like to try painting in an impressionist style or a cubist style? And doing that to learn, not to imitate. So working in the style of other artists shows us what we like, what we don't like. It can really show us new techniques. Da Vinci is another one who was famous for his sketchbook practice. And now there's, beautiful illustrations of his sketchbooks. Carl Jung, psychologist Carl Jung, drew a mandala every single day. And he has a beautiful book called the Red Book. I got to see an exhibit of his work in Santa Barbara when I was living there, and it was just what a treat to see these drawings. And he really used them for just personal knowing. He used the circle shape and would draw what was happening, what he was feeling inside the circle form. He called them mandalas. So again, what is that thing that you'd be willing to give 5 or 10 minutes a day to that would help you build towards improving your skills, that would help you build towards improving your skills? Okay, now he's crazy bright. I'm looking at it on the page and looking at it in the camera as well. Yes, such an inspiration, Marion, such an inspiration. Carl Jung, he was not an artist. He was the father of modern psychology, kind of coined the term archetype, but he used, again, mandalas. So if you look up Carl Jung, Jung, the Red Book, you can see some of those images of how he used these circular designs as a tool for just connecting to his own subconscious every day. They're very abstract for the most part. So I'm just coming in, trying to vary up my yellows. And I'm probably going to want to bring a little bit of yellow back to my background as well. And again, you just see how I layer paint, right? I just put it on, I take it off. I put it on, I take it off. I know you guys hear me say that a lot. But part of it is that fearless willingness to paint over, that fearless willingness to paint over what we've done. And I think we'll give our nest here a little light and texture as well. Coming in with that darkest yellow that was the gold yellow. Very orange. It's still in that yellow family. I don't even know if I like purple and yellow together. It's definitely a interesting color combo for me. I like purple and orange together. So learning the thing about working with the color wheel and with complementary colors, it's just learning to discover what it is that you like, what do you not like. He's definitely a quirky little bird here. And again, I'm cleaning off my brush on paper, which will get used as collage paper, putting as little paint as possible down the sink. Okay, so just need to vary that up a little bit. So this is the point where I just get to play with my two colors, decide if I want to come back in with more marks over the top of this. He is one funky little bird, right? So not perfect, not great, not something that I planned to paint, but fun nevertheless, right? So I worked with my complementary palette. I started with my Soul Scribble, and I just let this sort of evolve and go where it wanted to go. And it's very silly, right? It's a very silly little bird, but it's a reminder that I need more time on my home nest resting. Seems like I've been working a lot lately, and it's all good stuff. I did have some lovely rest time this weekend. And I'm noticing I've got a little just a white line here from where my canvas tape was stuck under there. So maybe I'm just going to paint that out. And I'm going to brighten up my sky. It's gotten, again, I'm looking for contrast. I want my silly birdie to stand out from the background. My clouds probably need a little white on them. White has a lot of purple in it. And I like having the sky a little bit brighter at the top in the light and maybe some dark down here. So maybe I'm even going to come back in with a little bit of that Payne's gray. Mix that with my purple to darken up my darkest purple. Maybe a little darker than I want. Contrast too much with my little bit of my stem there, but I think it's going to be great underneath. And it might be nice over here under his tail. Just again, adding just a tiny bit of shadow there to kind of have him maybe pop off the page more. And where it gets too dark, my favorite studio tools, and holy moly, I'm out of baby wipes. That's a tragedy in my studio because I use them all the time. It's just going to allow me to push that paint back a little bit, take all of it off or some of it off, and creates a cool effect on there. All right, so this wonky little bird is kind of cracking me up. Again, just working with that Soul Scribble, looking at how he kind of just showed up on the page to tell me a story. It was fast, it was fun, it didn't take a lot of time. I paused to draw something else in the center. Again, I can come back in with my Sharpie and bring back some of these lines. Remembering that you don't want to use your Sharpie over wet paint. You want to make sure your paint is nice and dry or it will ruin the tip of your Sharpie. And I say that to remind myself, you probably all know that, but I can't tell you how many markers and nice microns that I've destroyed from being impatient. So again, just adding that black, you can see it's just making the shapes pop. It's going to make my wonky little bird pop out here. I can bring back even, see, I did it. We got some wet paint on there. Some of those early marks that I made that I can just faintly see through underneath. Give him a little birdie eye. Oh, now he looks kind of fierce, doesn't he? Fiercely protecting his nest, right? Fiercely protecting his time. And I'm wanting to come in and like fix the shape of the nest, which I can do. I could have left it that wonky shape, but I'm like, what could I do to make this more pleasing to my eye, right? It's not about anybody else's eye, but how can I make it look like he's sitting even a little bit more in that nest? And I wouldn't have even sort of known that or thought about that if I hadn't been playing with my marker here. And so often I think a piece is done or it's close to done. And I never call it done until usually I take a picture of it, I walk away from it, I leave it sitting here and then, go up, have my breakfast, do my exercise, and I'll come back later and I'll see exactly what it needs, what's missing, what it's wanting. All right, so we're going to mix up a little bit more of our kind of brown here. My favorite cadmium yellow is just about gone. Purple and yellow make a wonderful brown together. And depending on the shade of purple and the shade of yellow that you choose, you will get a really nice variety of purple. So this is a more blue purple. If I were to use that violet, which is a more red purple, I would get even a different shade. And so because I'm still using my purple and yellow, these colors fit, they match, right? They're not, I didn't bring in a completely different shade of brown. I actually used all the same colors that I'm using in my picture. And so I still have that same color story happening. And now he looks to me happier, nestled a little deeper into his nest on his branch. I might just bring a little bit of that brown into my branch. So again, my painting process in my journal in the mornings is often very intuitive and playful and imperfect, right? Imperfect. Not going for perfection, not going for great, but going for something that feels pleasing to my eye. So that already feels a lot better to me. And now it's funny to think about like the differences between, turn my journal around. So here we have our, more realistic, specific, but still abstract peacock that I painted yesterday, right? Inspired by a photo and someone else's work of art. And then today, going a completely different direction. So this is my journal right side up, but doing that soul scribble and then letting that page just appear in my journal in this kind of fun, silly, wonky fashion. So once this is completely dry, I will come back in with that black pen and bring back the marks and the outline. And I'm trying to decide if I want to bring in a little bit more white, but I can feel that I'm at that point where if I don't walk away from this, I'm going to mess it up, right? And I definitely have a tendency to overwork my pieces. And so it's why I usually have two journals at hand. I love working on a couple of different pieces at the same time because if I'm not working on another one, then I'm going to want to sit here in the time that I have and be obsessed with this one, and I will push it too far. So, giving yourself permission to snap a photo, take a break, walk away. Once I finish this, I'm liking the color palette a little bit better. I can see where I might take those purple and yellows to a different purpose or to the canvas and use them a little bit differently. And just starting with one of these soul scribbles, it was kind of that permission really to just be in this very, very playful space with all of you this morning. And because it's the 31st of January, I'll do a quick retrospective. So almost every page in this journal was created live here on YouTube with everybody this month. Thank you, Judy. This is definitely my happy place. So we showed how to make envelopes. We looked at animal symbolism, horse and owl. This was created for another class. It was challenging and fun. My scribble gave me a puppy on a leash, so you gave him a fire hydrant. Oh, so fun. I put this page together, that imperfect creator. So this was, there's this watchful eye, but he's watching himself. So that was an interesting story. And these were the other two that were created for something else. But all of these pages were created this month on our journey together. And I'm always amazed when I come to the end of the month and see how much can be accomplished in just an hour a day. Here's our bear and working with intuitive collage processes. So we went through a lot this month. We're going to be a little made this fun slow stitching on the page, added fabric pockets. Love adding pockets to my journals. Love slow stitching on paper and fabric. So we're going to do something related to self-love in February, and I haven't quite figured out the form, but I think it's important, and those of you that have been creating along with me, to just pause and look back at, what have you created over the last month, and to feel that it's enough. Like this page, I simply glued an image down, right? And that counts. I was inspired by those colors and this palette to create this little page here. And then we had our peacock and our silly quirky bird. So thank you so much for joining me for the first time. Thank you for joining me again and again and again throughout the month. I will be back with an all new theme, maybe even a new journal. Definitely going to be working with sacred circles throughout the month of February and looking at the different ways that we can, like Carl Jung, use that concept of the circle to focus in on ourselves and to be in the magic and the energy of connecting with ourselves and our art on the page. Good morning, Yvonne. Thank you. Thank you. It is my pleasure to be here sharing my process with all of you. Thank you for watching. This is Dr. Minette Riordan. This is Painting in Your PJs live with Minette and my quirky bird. I will see you tomorrow morning, February 1st, already 2023, for some more Painting in Your PJs live. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Barb, that's hilarious that you're going to set an alarm. I love having you here live, and I believe in a good night's sleep as well.